as I launch this program. I am right now just tinkering with times, but the program will officially launch on January 1st. I plan to do this Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. to midnight. I have guests I'm lining up. In fact, Monday night, this coming Monday night, at 10 p.m., I will be joined by Jay Dyer, who has been a regular guest of mine. He's very scholarly. He's got a lot of information about religion and its intersection with politics. I believe he's the author of several really interesting books, Esoteric Hollywood, Part 1 and 2. And we're going to be talking about basically the rise of the Great Reset and the World Economic Forum, the Fourth Revolution, all of that stuff, and what that means in the context of transhumanism and really everything else that's going on right now that is essentially making up the establishment of our world today, for better or for worse. And I generally think for worse. I'm scared as hell of it, but perhaps others may think otherwise. So we'll be doing that Monday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, this is Charles Moscowitz. The program is going to be Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time. And I'm looking forward to it. Let me give out one of the things that's going to be unique about this program, and actually is unique right now, is that I can take phone calls right off the street. If you're watching this program right now, if you're sitting at your computer, you can reach for your smartphone, your cell phone, your old-fashioned phone, whatever, and dial up an old-fashioned number, and you will be heard on this program, and we can talk. 617-396-4958 is the phone number. 617-396-4958. You're welcome to join. I am developing some marketing things and everything else to sort of help launch the program. It is carried by, and it will be carried even more by, I think it's at this point, it's 12 live streams that are carrying the program. And I think by January 1st, that number is going to go up. And also about 20 different archival sites and podcasting sites, including the big ones. I'm on iTunes, I'm on iHeartRadio, Spotify, all of it. So I think that I have enough to work with here. And once I start contacting these companies and developing means by which I can bring in more listeners from each one of them, and there are many of them out there, then I think that I'm going to have the sufficient basis to accomplish what I want to do with this program, which is to have a live experience where we can delve into issues at depth, where we can converse, where I can have interesting and at times controversial guests, and where, because it's going to be late night, I might be, and hopefully, I can't guarantee this, but I'm hoping that I will be less subject to the censorship that is going on right now, the political censorship, and thus I can get into a little bit more of issues that have been censored, let's put it that way. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm not going to get into much tonight. I just want to touch on two issues because I think they're interesting and positive. These are good developments. These are good good stars, all right? And the first one is something that I read about, or I watched a video by Dinesh D'Souza, who I follow. And then I checked that out with a couple of other videos that were talking about the same thing. And it's an interesting phenomena that he is talking about, and that is what can only be described as a mass conversion of Muslims to Christianity that is taking place primarily in Asia and Africa, not so much in the United States, and not so much in Europe. And and even Al Jazeera, which is one of the main Muslim media outlets, it comes out of Qatar, has said that in the past 5 years, there's been 6 million Muslims who have converted to Christianity. And this includes in places like, Iraq, Iran, Egypt, Libya, Pakistan. We're talking really the heartland of the Muslim world. And the way this is happening, according to Dinesh D'Souza and several other sources that I have looked at, is that Muslim men and women are reporting on dreams that they're having, and that the dream is similar in almost all cases. And they're showing up at churches and asking to speak to the local imam, which of course in the Christian world is a priest or minister, and I think likely a priest in the Middle East. And they're reporting these dreams and asking what they mean and feeling that something has happened. And the way it works is that the dream basically is very stark, very direct, where they believe that they see the image of a man in white luminescent robes and a magnificent golden head and face that illuminates light. And that this, and it sounds to me like the Catholic Jesus, frankly, and that this man says, I love you, and I've died for you, and I came to save you, which of course is the basic Christian message that was purported to come from Jesus. Now, I think that Christians can rightfully say that there's something divine about this. I don't know that. I'm not Christian myself, but I do believe that these things have a divine element to it. I believe in dreams. Dreams are consistent with the Torah, the Bible. Joseph had dreams, right? Jacob had dreams where he fought with the angel. I think that Moses had dreams. The prophets would dream. These are things that have significance in Jewish law and is Israelite and Jewish understanding. And I'm not ready to crack open the big book here, and I'm not by any means a Torah expert, but these things, dreams can clarify a mission in life. I'm just getting a little water here. And I personally can speak to this. Just in a very mild sense. I have like a guest coming up on my show in the past. I'm writing a book, and I've written many books, and I'm struggling with something in the book. I can't figure out where to go with it. I'm stuck. They call that writer's block, where I've reached a point where I'm hitting a brick wall and I don't know what to do. And that can last a while. And then I have a dream. And it's not like I can literally remember what happened in the dream. Usually I don't. But when I wake up, I feel like bing, like a light has gone off in my head. Like, wow, I get it. Suddenly I know exactly where to go. Now, is that divine intervention? Who knows? Is that prayer? Who knows? I do pray, and I do ask for help. But however it happens, my mission, my goal in terms of this particular mission, in this case, writing a book, has been clarified. I know what I want to do. I know where I want to go with it, and I go and I get it done. And I think that this can happen in a lot of areas of life. And by the way, it's not just dreams, but it's prayer. If you go to a place where you shut off all of the external noise and clutter and nuttiness that goes on in a daily life, and you just have some quiet time. I used to do this when I go on my long walks during the height of the pandemic. And you kind of like quiet your head and you inhale and you breathe into all of the various parts of your body. You make sure everything is oxygenated. Oxygen is the greatest cure in the world. Let me just digress a little bit here. I read an article a long time ago where this man it's actually in the early American history, early 19th century. He was about maybe 30 years old. He had been told that he had a dread disease and that he only had a little time to live. He was extremely ill, very sick. I don't know exactly what he had, but he was And who knows whether or not he actually was going to die, but he had something. And so he decided that in order he would finish his life by going native, by moving west and joining with the Native American tribes. Again, this is early America, right? Maybe early 19th century. So he goes west, he gets acquainted with the tribe, he goes native, he goes Indian, and they tell him that the best cure for his illness is breathing. And they went through different breathing methodologies, inhale in one nostril, exhale in the other, then do the other nostril, inhale and exhale. I think there's some of this in Eastern traditions as well, like Buddhism. And I also think it's in Christianity, in the teachings of Saint Teresa of Avila. And I think probably Judaism has it too. I mean, no question. But the point is that he cured himself and he ended up living another 50 years. He had a family and he really got over his problem. The reason I bring this up only is to note that good health and good life, if you will, there are things that are just available to us right in front of us. We just need to open our eyes and see them. And one of the basics is to simply stop every day and breathe and do it consciously and make sure that your entire body is properly oxygenated. You breathe into the extremities of your fingers and your toes, and you experience them, and you try to imagine that oxygen is getting there. And you will become stronger and healthier. Now, this relates, I would suggest, to prayer or contemplation, which is where I came to realize this, in that in the course of praying, you can answer questions about your own life and your own destiny. You can see more clearly all of the lies and all of the falseness and all of the fake news that is swirling around us, because things start to click. We have a basic ability to reason. It's what makes us man and women. It's what separates us from the animal kingdom. It's why we are created in the image of God, because we can reason, because we can think, we can use logic, we can have insight, we can integrate knowledge, we have an imagination, we can invent, and we can control elements of our own destiny that we did not realize we could. We have powers that are real. I'm not above and beyond what's accessible to the vulnerable and weak human nature, and we're certainly imperfect beings, of course. But in the context of who we are, and in the context of our dire circumstances, we can control a great deal. I'll just give one more anecdote before moving on here. Natan Sharansky was a Russian refusnik who served, I think, 19 years in solitary confinement in Siberia because he was a dissident in the Soviet Union. Eventually, he was let go and he went to Israel, where he became a member of the Knesset, and he's a very successful man. He's a really admirable man. But he talked about how it is that he survived during those decades in prison, in very bad conditions, no freedom. And basically what he realized was that while they can enslave the body, while they can lie to the person, while they can, control the communication, they can control the externals of what this person is told is going on in the world, they could not control his inner life. They could not control his spirit and his soul. And so he was able to develop a strong internal life. He probably had that anyways going in, but he was able to strengthen that to the point where he, this has been reported in a way. I suppose another analogy is during the Vietnam War, you had Vietnam American soldiers being held at Hanoi Hilton for many, many years in very bad condition. They would learn a foreign language. They would learn advanced trigonometry and calculus. because each of them had a little knowledge and they could share it and develop it to the point where they could teach themselves incredible things. That's how the human mind and the human soul work, and there's no difference between the two. So, getting back to my subject at hand here, millions of Muslims are converting to Christianity all over the world because they're having this dream where Jesus comes to them. And they are, they're becoming Christians. And it's a unique event in history because never before in Islamic history have people left Islam to this degree. There's always been a few, but it's a very rare thing for Muslims to leave. I mean, they're not allowed to leave. You could be killed if you leave. You could be declared a heretic or an apostate, and you could risk your life. Again, I'm not trying to be anti-Muslim here. I'm simply noting that the Islamic system is both a religious and political system. It's a militant system in that it does control society through Sharia, and it does seek world conquest through jihad. That's just a fact. Now, obviously, most Muslims don't embrace that, but the point is that historically, it is, when you're Muslim, it's not only are you a believer, but you're part of a political control system. It's very authoritarian. In the West, we don't understand this in America so much because that's not who we are. But that's been historically what Islam is. So what's changing now? Why all of a sudden, and there's one period of exception in Islamic history, and that was the Spanish conquest. The conquest by the Catholic Spain of Andalusia, which had been an Islamic nation for many, many centuries. And you had, in that case, upwards of 1 million or so, or maybe more than 1 million Muslims who did convert to Christianity rather than the Spanish Inquisition. So didn't Jews, in that part of the world, because that's what you had to do in order to stay there and survive, or you had to be exiled. So that's the only example in history where you had any form of a mass conversion of Muslims, and that was by force. So the phenomena of voluntary conversion is new. Now, Dinesh D'Souza was saying, and these two other sources that I watched on YouTube are saying, and I'm no expert on it, I'm just going with a little information here, that they think that it's because Islam is becoming more radicalized, it's becoming more extreme, and that it's turning people off, to large numbers. They're going to their mosque and they're hearing, some stuff that they're like, wait a minute, I can't go along with this. This is crazy. I'm not going to do this. This isn't me. So they're becoming disillusioned. And that's when the dream happens. However it happens, it's a very interesting development. And I think that it's also running concomitant with mass conversion to Christianity in Southern Africa and in China. So these are good developments, in my opinion, and I'm very pleased that it's happening. I think it's Christianity is oriented toward more individual freedom, a personal relationship with God. It's not, it isn't this political authoritarian type of entity. Not that it can't be, and when it is, it's not itself. Let's put it that way. It's not by nature. And I just would, as a little codicil, say that my hope is that in Israel, I don't know, this is way out there, admittedly, but maybe you might have some Muslims who actually might think about becoming a Jew. After all, the mission of Israel is as a Jewish state. I believe that, both spiritually and politically, the tiny nation of Israel has a role in the universe, I believe, as a Jew. And so maybe I'm using my own faith here when I say this, but I believe that many Palestinians who trace their ancestry back, and I would suggest that most Palestinians today don't. They settled there along with the Jews in the late 19th, early 20th century, mainly for economic reasons. But those who do, the big families, the Nasashibis and the Husseinis and others, they probably, and I think there's been some DNA evidence to prove this, they probably have Jewish roots going back to even the Byzantine and Roman times and the early Muslim period, and that their families converted to Islam because that was the political power at the time, for the same reason that Bosnians in Europe converted to Islam, even though they're Slavic and their language is Slavic and they're ethnically no different than the Serbs or the Croats, but they chose to convert to Islam, as did the Albanians, because the Ottoman Empire ruled the land and it was an easier way to go. I mean, it's just, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just noting it as a fact of history. And yet, I think if in Israel, maybe some of the Arabs who might trace their ancestry back might have an awakening and realize that the mission, the spiritual mission, not to mention the political mission of the state of Israel, is to be a Jewish society, a Jewish land, a Jewish state. And that to really become part of that, maybe they might become Jews. Anyways, I'm not going to say more. Let me move on to the next topic. I don't want to stay on too late tonight. Let me again mention the show is going to go live Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. to midnight, starting January 1st. And I am going to take calls. The number is 617-396-4958, 617-396-4958. Now, Republicans have begun an independent January 6th probe. This couldn't happen any sooner, because what's happened is that the Democrats under Nancy Pelosi have set up a January 6th probe that is a political hatchet job. This is not how Congress has ever done this before. They're not supposed to do what they've done, which is basically she has not consulted with the minority party, the Republican Party, and allowed the minority party to place their members on a committee. That's how it's been done since the days of George Washington. You have any congressional committee has to have members from the opposing groups on the committee, so it doesn't turn into a witch hunt. So it doesn't become overly political. It's going to be political anyway, but at least if you have opposition members who get equal time when it comes to the testimony and questioning, who can bring in their own witnesses and who can fully participate in the proceedings, maybe at a slight disadvantage, and that's fine because the majority party is Democrat, and that has consequences. I recognize that. But they at least get to appoint a few of their own people. And that has been denied by this committee. Nancy Pelosi has refused to seat the Republican members of Congress that were recommended by the Republican minority leader, McCarthy. Instead, she's put on the committee a couple of window dressing Republicans that she chose that had nothing to do with anything that was recommended by the committee. And they happen to be Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, both of whom are Trump haters and both of whom are very partisan in that way. They're Republican in name only, and they've been denounced by their own party. Either way, they were not chosen by the minority leader, and thus it brings into serious question the legitimacy of this committee. And the committee has behaved very politically. They haven't looked into elements of the January 6th event that should be looked into. Instead, they're trying to continue this hatchet job on Trump. They're trying to make this false accusation that Trump had something to do with the incursion and that he encouraged it. And they're continuing to push this, I would say, lie that this was a, quote, insurrection, unquote. And as long as that committee is in place and it continue to intimidate people, they're just not going to have any legitimacy. They are prosecuting anybody who questioned the election, which is a right for Americans. That is their business. and anyone who organized the protest, which was a peaceful protest. It was supposed to be. The fact that there was this horrible incursion into the Capitol itself had nothing to do with the planning and the implementation of that rally, which was there to promote and protect the right of 7 states, or 6 states, actually 7 states, to have hearings on the legitimacy of the seating of their delegations. That's something that happens every 4 years practically. That is an American tradition. It's entirely constitutional, and that was interrupted by the incursion. So you have now the Republicans are launching their own probe. It's about time. Let me just read the article. This comes from Blubberbuzz, which I get every day. I recommend it. As the select committee assembled to probe the January 6th riot continues to question witnesses and issue subpoenas, House Republicans, who were initially selected to sit on the panel, are silently working on their counter investigation and plan to release a report on their findings. So you have the congressmen who were chosen by Leader McCarthy to be on that committee now going ahead with the investigation anyway. So Republicans, at the direction of Leader McCarthy, are conducting our own investigation, says Indiana Representative Jim Banks on Wednesday. I can't go into many of the specifics of what we've done or what we are doing, Banks said, but I will tell you that we will be releasing our findings publicly in the future. The resolution to create the select committee allowed House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy to, quote, recommend 5 members to sit on the committee. And again, that is tradition. That is how it's always done, regardless of which party is in power. But allowed Nancy Pelosi the final say on the selections. Okay. In a never-before-seen move, Pelosi blocked Banks, who was set to be a ranking member, and Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio from sitting on the committee. That provoked McCarthy to remove his other 3 selections in protest unless all 5 were seated. The 2 Republicans who do sit on the committee, Vice Chairwoman Liz Cheney of Wyoming and Representative Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, were appointed by Pelosi rather than McCarthy. And by the way, I don't understand how Liz Cheney could still be a vice chairwoman when her own state of Wyoming has kicked her out of the Republican Party. But put that aside. This, I think, is a very positive development. So they are investigating those events because there's a lot of questions about whether or not there might have been FBI agents involved, whether there might have been Antifa involved, why the Capitol Police opened the doors in some cases, why they were violent in others, why people, and really whether or not people who were peacefully walking around in the Capitol, where they shouldn't have been, and they were trespassing, but they didn't do damage. Were they really trying to overthrow the government? Was this an insurrection? Or were they just let in? And all of these questions need to be investigated impartially, and that's what is supposed to happen with this committee. Not to mention the fact that hundreds of people are being held in prison over this without having faced charges, which is something that should be an outrage to any and all Americans. Okay, let me just finish up here. After pulling his picks, McCarthy said, quote, "We will run our own investigation. Why was the Capitol so ill prepared for that day when they knew on December 14 they had a problem? And what have we done to make sure that it never happens again?" Now, that's a pretty good question, you know? I mean, how could it be that the US Capitol, where you have both houses of Congress assembled, you have the vice president, you have basically the entire government sitting in this one room, and they didn't have proper security? I mean, I'm here in Boston. A couple of years ago, a little bit before the pandemic, I had to go to the federal building in Boston to get my passport renewed, just regular business. The Tip O'Neill building, which is in downtown Boston. And to get in, I mean, I had to go through, a screen. I had to take off my shoes and my belt and my wallet and my smartphone, have that all go through. Then I had to go through a screen. They checked me. They did a little thing with the wand. And that was just, that's not the US Capitol. That's just a local federal building. So how could it be that there wasn't any kind of security like that at the US Capitol? Huh? I mean, I think it's a very interesting question. And the responsibility for security at the US Capitol resides with the Speaker of the House, not the President of the United States. The Speaker of the House is responsible for security at the US Capitol and its various annexes, not the President of the United States. So why was that done? Why wasn't there reasonable security? Why do they have these rinky-dinky, bike racks? And why were, it's just outrageous. Anyway, so I wonder why. We can speculate, but I'm not going to right now. This endeavor led by Banks meets that commitment. He said that the January 6th committee is based on a conspiracy theory. Exactly. That January 6th was an inside job secretly orchestrated by President Trump and his closest advisors. It's preposterous. And by the way, if there is a conspiracy, I don't think it was organized by Trump. But putting that aside, I'm not saying there is. But this idea that Trump would send the guy with the fuzzy hat and the face paint in to overthrow the government and stop what was going to be hearings on the legitimacy of 7 states. Why would Trump do this? Why would the Republicans do this? It's insane. And it's been used to suppress speech. It's been used to restrict freedoms to an unprecedented degree. We haven't had this kind of restriction on freedom in this country since World War I. Okay. Cheney has already revealed some of what Banks has been working on in a counter effort. And then there's some information. During debate on whether to hold former President Donald Trump's advisor, Steve Bannon, in contempt of Congress for refusing to follow a congressional subpoena, she revealed that Banks sent letters to executive branch agencies identifying himself as the original ranking member of the committee and asking that they provide him with the same information that it gave the committee. Banks claims that an effort established by the minority party should have access to those records. Because McCarthy refused to seat any Republicans on the board, the minority does not have access to materials that the committee receives from government agencies or the ability to object to minority questioning in deposition interviews. That effort has not been especially prosperous. A response from the FBI said, "We respectfully refer you to the select committee. They're passing the buck." Anyway, that's what's going on. So on that note, I'm going to thank you for joining me. Let me just mention that my new book is available at Amazon Books. You're welcome to check it out. Sociology for Conservatives. This is my earlier book. I wrote this. This is the one I published just before this book. I'm going to hold it up because I happen to have it here. The Satanic Conspiracy, The Spectre Haunting Mankind. My books are available at Amazon Books. Just go to your Amazon book server, put in my name, Charles Moscowitz. That's Moscow, Moscowitz, and all of my books come up. I've written almost 20 books, so check them out. I'm self-sponsored, and I basically am sponsored by my books, which are very reasonably priced. So thank you for joining me, everyone. God bless you all. I'm looking forward Monday night at 10 p.m. to having Jay Dyer here, Esoteric Hollywood, and to launching this program Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. to midnight. Thank you.